Are you a ham radio technician wondering exactly what it is you can do with that license? Or maybe you're looking at getting your license and curious, is it really worth it? Is there a whole lot I can do? Well, there's a whole lot more than people tend to give technicians credit for. So let's check out your options today on K5ATA, Caffeinated Radio. Y'all, as we get started, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, make sure you hit that bell so you get notified when we have new content, and we would greatly appreciate it. Also, there are a couple links down below. If you'd like to help support the Padawans, there's a Patreon link, there is an Amazon affiliate link where you can do your normal Amazon shopping. It just kind of gives us a little chunk of the change there to help the Padawans. And there's also a join button down below to join the channel to help support us. And all of that goes to help support getting Padawans or students on the air. So, y'all, I appreciate that. So let's check it out. Okay, so let's start with the one everybody knows about. Everybody gets into ham radio as a technician. Some people go technician straight to general, but everybody gets into it and has immediate access to all of the VHF and UHF frequencies. So one of the main things that you're initially going to have access to is repeaters. Okay, so you can see here I have a repeater on one side of my ICOM ID 5100, and I have a simplex calling frequency on the other side. You have access to the entire frequency range of the 2 meter and 70 centimeter bands, and we'll look at those bands in a minute. Another thing to consider is that you also have access to digital voice, which is a way that you can work the world on a 2 meter radio. For example, this is a D-Star radio, and with this D-Star radio I can key up onto a D-Star repeater or my hotspot, and I can talk to stations all over the country and all over the world using digital voice, where it combines radio with the internet. So immediately, right out of the gate, you have access to be able to work the world. You'll hear a lot of people say things like, oh, D-Star DMR Fusion, that's not real radio, it uses the internet. Well, it doesn't have to use the internet, and the fact that it combines the internet with radio is just another advancement of technology, and that's what amateur radio is all about. Tinkering, learning new things, and advancing technology. So this is definitely a great way to get on the air and get to work the world. And it's really simple. You can make easy contacts with it. It's a great way to entertain yourself driving to and from work or school. Or just I leave my radio on at the house, and every now and then, like yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk to a couple of the Padawans that just got their licenses. So let's see what else we've got. Okay, here you can see the amateur radio band plan, and this is the one put out by the American Radio Relay League. You can pick one of these if you want a nice one printed out. It's a nice big sheet. You can pick one up on their website, but they have it on their website where you can just look at it. And you'll notice I put my big head over the 80 meter band, and well, we'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so what does a technician get access to on the band plan? And we'll have another video on exactly how to read this coming up. So let's take a look. Like I said, you have all of the 70 centimeter band. That's the 420 megahertz, 440 I usually call it. You have the 33 megahertz band, which I never mess with, but it's there. You have access to 222 through 225 on the 220 band. And on 2 meters, you have access to the whole thing. Same thing on 6 meters. You have access to the entire band. And 6 meters is quite often referred to as the magic band because sometimes some weird, funky things happen and you can work all over the world. But here is one that a lot of people tend to forget. If you look at the 10 meter band, it shows that we have access to 28.300 to 28.500. And that's on phone. You can use phone meaning voice, so you can talk using a microphone from 28.300 to 28.500. And you'll hear a lot of people say things like, oh, well, 10 meters isn't really alive. I'm fitting to prove you wrong, brother. Okay. But another thing to remember is that you also have access to CW. You can use a lot of the bands that generals and extras get to use if you just learn CW. if you look down to, let me see if I can point at it. If you look down to the 17 meter band, you don't have anything there. Same thing on 20, same thing on 30. But when you jump up to 40 meters, you get a little bit of CW stuff down in there that you can use. And then I'm kind of covering, let me shrink my head here a minute. Okay, now that I'm all shrunken, you can see this is the 80 meter band. And you actually have access to, on the 80 meter band, from 3525 to 3600 using CW. It does limit you to 200 watts max, but that's okay. So you have access to a whole lot more than a lot of people tend to give credit for. So what else can you do with that technician license? Like I said, people tend to think that 10 meters isn't often alive. There's not a whole lot of DX on 10 meters. Well, let's see just how much DX there can be on 10 meters. Okay, so before I show off some of that DX, if you look, this is straight off of the NASA website. Okay, you have two pictures of the sun, one showing the solar minimum and one showing the solar maximum. And you'll notice the only real difference is there's some little bitty spots over there. Well, they look little bitty, but they're actually quite big. And they do amazing things for amateur radio, at least on some of these upper frequencies. And so, while you may not always be able to get good DX on 10 meters, we're coming into cycle 25, ladies and gentlemen, which means our propagation on 10 meters is fixing to go through the roof. So what I did is I exported some of my contacts from the last solar, pretty close to the solar maximum during the last cycle, and I exported all of my 10 meter contacts. Well, a bunch of my 10 meter contacts. And I plotted them out so that you could see what they are. And that's them. You can see this in the center there is my home QTH here in Mississippi. And I worked Japan, Australia, got some Hawaii in there. Not sure what that little dot is down there in the South Pacific. Got a couple Africa contacts in there, several South America, all over Europe. Got Alaska, I worked the world on 10 meters. And while no, it might not have necessarily been right between 28,300 and 28,500, it was all in the 10 meter band. And so it's generally a fair assumption that if part of 10 meters is open, the whole thing's probably pretty well open for you, or at least you have a good shot at it. So don't ever let somebody tell you that you can't work the world as a technician, because you certainly can. And another thing ham radio technicians can do is skywarn. They can be weather spotters. They can participate in emergency communications. They can be a part of the amateur radio emergency service. They can be part of RACES. Any of these emergency groups that help coordinate communications during either times where there are disasters or severe weather, or just helping out to provide communications for marathons and races and community events. There's a lot of community participation that can be had, and you can make a lot of good friends that way. And so that's something else that a lot of techs enjoy doing. And another thing hams like to do is fox hunting. Not that kind of fox. But there's fox hunting, radio direction finding. You build a directional antenna or a bidirectional antenna, head out, find a hidden transmitter. It's a lot of fun. It helps you practice for finding downed aircraft, but it also just gets you outside playing radio. And last, but certainly not least, is SOTA, Summits on the Air. You can easily activate Summits on the Air summits with just a technician license. A handy talkie, throw yourself on a simplex frequency, get out there, make your contacts, and activate a summit. Parks on the Air can be a little more complicated with just a technician license, but Summits on the Air, this may be your ticket. So that's kind of a quick look at some of the options that are out there for ham radio technicians. Is it all of them? No, certainly not. But there are some good choices out there. So the key here is don't let somebody tell you that you can't do something on ham radio just because you're a technician, because there are tons of options out there. Any questions about how to do any of these things or where to get started? drop a comment below. I'm more than happy to help. Shoot me an email, whatever it takes to get you on the air. So y'all, I appreciate you being here. 7-3, y'all take care, and I hope to see you on the air.